I think we're going to go ahead and get started with our next presenter. So this is Mike Kramer, and he's with SurePoint Ag. In conversations with growers, farmers, dealers who are interested in furrow, there's lack of information, and I certainly didn't have any. So I started doing some research to try to figure out what types of application systems might work with our product. I know Sean and others have had frustrations with the old sight glass system, and we have a dark product so you can't see the ball or whatever. So I'm like, okay, well, what else is out there that can help monitor flow or rate or both? Or this system even has an ISO component you can map if you want to be that detailed. And I'm going to let him tell you about it because I wouldn't do a great job. But I met Mike. He came up and looked. In fact, we've priced the system out for our own research planner, which we're probably not going to buy because this planner is old. We're going to update first. But they definitely have a system that will work with products like ours and give you the ability to know that in fact you are putting it on and how much and all that without having to guess or wonder or leave a couple acre strip and go oops and then have a real problem. So with that, I'll let you introduce yourself, Mike, and tell us a little bit about SurePoint, and then give us the skinny on your product lineup.
Okay. First of all, I know you're going to hate me for this, but can I get you guys to maybe just come up to this table, like right in here-ish, because I want to show you some things, and I think you'll be able to see some better up here, and then I think it's probably just a little bit better. But anyway, so once again, Mike Kramer is my name. I'm the territory manager for Iowa and Missouri for SurePoint. And if you're wondering who SurePoint is, SurePoint was Surefire. So about a year ago, Deere bought a very large percentage of SurePoint, or Surefire at the time. And so we had to change our names to SurePoint. Just a lot of legal mumbo jumbo, let's leave it out of that. But anyway, so we are Surefire, but now we're SurePoint because of that. So same stuff, different company, or same company, same stuff, but just a little different name. And so yes, we are in a joint venture with Deere, and we are very busy with that too. So Terry called me here kind of several months ago, and exactly what he said. He was looking for something that would work with the humic acid and stuff like that, because it's a darker color, and how do we know that we're putting on the right rates? And what I heard him say when he was up here was that it appears with this humic acid and stuff that the rates are pretty, there's a fine line, too much, too little. And so, over the years, I've worked a lot with fertilizer systems in my previous life with Deere and stuff like that too. And specifically on planters, everybody gets frustrated with fertilizer systems. They either don't see a yield increase, or they have so much trouble with it, they're blowing fittings, and after 100 acres it just gets shut off, and guess what, we got to go plant. That happens a lot. And so you talk to people after that experience, hey, why aren't you putting some starter or something else on? And you get a barrage of answers. I think when a lot of people will ask me, what do you recommend? Well, first of all, we at SurePoint, we are not an agronomy company. We don't really recommend anything. I have some agronomy background. Went to Iowa State myself, and I guess I get back to the facts. I get back to first of all, exactly what the agronomist said today. She said, if you think of soil as a living organism, and we try to increase the health of that organism, you're going to get better yields. The other thing I go back to with guys is, they say, well, should I put starter on? Well, you see your neighbor's field that does, or some type of fertilizer. You see your neighbor that does, right? And you can see that his corn plants visibly look better, right? We know at the V4, V5 stage, that corn plant is kind of deciding, hey, how healthy am I today, right now, and what could truly my potential yield be? And so I think, you know, that to me, that really solves the case for that. But beyond that, I don't really go too much into it. But certainly this humic acid is really, really interesting. So SurePoint Ag, Atwood, Kansas is where we are at. And it is in northwest Kansas. I'll be honest with you, this place is in the middle of a cornfield, guys. Well, it's a field. It's dry land. It's something. Sometimes it's a cornfield. But that's where this company was started 15 years ago. It was started in 2007 by the Walter brothers, along with Blaine Ginther. The Walter brothers, they're engineers by trade, and they farm as well. And so they ran into a lot of the issues with these fertilizers and stuff that you guys have ran into. And thus, that's why they started to build these systems, because they were frustrated as well. Especially with products that back then you didn't have maybe the purity in some of the products. I think the product that you guys are working with, this yield igniter, is a pretty good product. It flows good. It doesn't have, you know, it's not chunky, that kind of thing. But back then, that was also one of the nightmares. Of some of that starter and stuff had stuff that plugged a lot of things, right? So they designed these systems around that so that we can feed things through there. And then as time developed, or time went along, then we started adding, you know, monitoring. And of course, CAN bus came along, and ISO, you know, displays and stuff in the cab. And so now we've developed all that into systems where we can speak right to most displays, especially mostly the newer ones, because with a lot of things going on in there, you got to have a pretty good processor in there. So when we look at the backbone of our systems, and I'm going to get to the monitoring part here in just a minute, but when we look at the backbone of our systems, that first picture up there, does this have a gollywanger to it? A pointer dealy-wanger? Is it the top one? Oh, you bet. There it is. Here's really the backbone to SurePoint Ag fertilizer systems. We use a metering tube, or orificing tube. Some people call it a microfiber tube. I call it a metering tube or an orificing tube because it's doing just that. Rather than run an orifice disc with a really small hole, we run 8 feet of this tube with a much bigger hole in it. That is where we get the flow. That's where we reduce our plugging, because then back at the tank, where a lot of people run a lot of multiple strainers, or, you know, very fine mesh strainers, guys, we run a 20 mesh strainer. That's it, coming out of the tank, because we can flow it through those hoses. Okay, a lot of companies will run like an 80 mesh strainer. You know, when you talk to guys, you go, you know, we run a 20, they run an 80, and they kind of look at you, oh, okay. Well, what is 20, what is 80? Guys, pass those around. There's 20 and 80, okay? There's the difference. And so that's how we can flow product so well through our systems. Those orificing tubes, we run a dual orificing tube on each machine. So that means there's 2 tubes. One has a bigger inner diameter, one has a smaller inner diameter. And we can switch between those 2 tubes. So now you've got a range, you know, whereas you're not out there, you know, every time you increase your speed, every time you increase your rate, you have to really take a look at what your pressure is being created by that disc orifice, So now you've got a range of probably 3 or 4 or 5 disc orifices to play with without getting into the fertilizer. Okay, when we design systems, everybody wants to do it differently. Okay, obviously there's different areas. They're putting on different products. There's different biologicals out there. They have different weights, densities, different rates that they're going to put on, different speeds that they're going to run, and so we try to build systems that give you a good range to go on. So today, if you want to put 5 gallon on, but tomorrow you want to put 7, or maybe even change up your product a little bit. Or the big craze in the equipment world right now is product upgrade kits. So we take a planter bar and we throw a high speed units, things like that on there. When you double your speed, you double your flow, right? And so when you double your flow in our systems, you just a little bit over double your pressure. In an orifice system, you more than quadruple your pressure because of the turmoil that's created by trying to push it through that small hole. What I can tell you is, what I'm confident about is that our systems, we can get you the right rate to each row. And I think that's really, really important with what you guys are doing here. We have to be certain that we're getting the right rate to each row. And I think over the years, I dealt with a lot of these systems, and I think over the years, you know, guys that maybe didn't see a yield increase, maybe it's, you know, maybe it's because they didn't get the right rate to each row. I've never really seen where a starter fertilizer, if I put a whole bunch on one row, I get enough of increase on that row to where if I didn't get very much on the next row, that evens out. That's just my opinion. I'm not an agronomist. I haven't done any studying on that, but I just wondered if that's what that meant. And so maybe they never saw a yield increase, and maybe that was part of the reason. And then, of course, when they blew enough fittings and they had enough trouble with it, they were so fed up with fertilizer on their planter that they never wanted to do it again, and I don't blame them, not one bit. Our systems, truly, guys, we have the entire system from the ISO plug of the tractor all the way to the back, tanks and all. We have it, and we, like you say, we build the systems to fit what you're doing, and then also we try to build some buffer in there, okay? And our systems, if you start very basic, you can basically upgrade, okay? If you start looking at monitoring, especially the way we do, it gets expensive. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, if I could get started this year, get the base unit on there, and then maybe next year I can add monitoring, you know, those are kinds of things we can do. Ultimately, what we want you to do is back up when you're putting seed in, hook your fertilizer hose up, fill your tank up, and go. That's what we want, okay? So the last thing too, one thing that I think really I like about our systems is usually fertilizer and moving parts don't really go together. Would you agree with that? Okay, the first day of a moving part with fertilizer, it's probably its best day. And so, you know, down to our flow meters, there's just not a lot of moving parts. And so we use electromagnetic flow meters. They're very accurate. There's no moving parts, okay? And so those are some of the things. When you look at the backbone of our systems, those are some of the things that really make our systems work. So then let's get into, because this group right here, I think one of the things that Terry, the interest that Terry has expressed, and I think something you would be interested in, is being able to monitor that liquid. You know, and when you put the humic acid with this, it turns that fluid pretty dark. And at that point in time, you know, it's very, very hard to see the red ball flow indicators, okay? The other thing about the red balls, we sell them. You know, for guys that I'm confident enough that we're going to put the right rate on at each row anyway. If our system is plumbed right, that if you have a red ball, then balls are going to sit pretty much level the whole time. I'm confident in that. But they don't map, and truly you can't really tell just how truly close they are. And they're back on the planter wings. A lot of times there's dust off the tractor tires. You can't see them anyway. And then with the dark fluid, you really can't see them, you know. So this is a way, so we have our Sentinel row monitors. So basically it comes in packs of 4, and it looks it's this. So this is our Sentinel flow meters. And these go on each row, so each row goes through there. So they come in a pack of 4, and these speak to our rate controller. Oh, you go back there. And this button, to our rate controller, which then speaks to your monitor to monitor exactly what's going on. And I can show you on that display what that looks like. Okay? These are electromagnetic flow meters. Okay? That's what each one of these is. So basically it's just 4 of them stacked together, and and then each row gets monitored. What rates did you say you were typically running this humic acid at?
Probably 3 to 6 gallon. Sean, you're probably somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, we're just over 4.
Yeah.
Just over 4?
3 to 6 is going to catch it.
Okay.
From feedback I've talked to people.
Okay. Are you mixing that with anything, like another fertilizer?
Just one.
Some guys
So you're basically it's a total package then, right? You're putting on 4 to 6 gallon, but that's like that could be a starter mixed with the humic, right? Okay. There's only one downfall to these things, and we need at least 10 ounces per row per minute to be able to monitor. Otherwise, we don't have enough flow. We are working on a low flow one that'll get us down in probably that 3 to 5 ounces. What does 10 ounces look like? I basically go 5 and 5. I need 5 miles an hour, I need 5 gallon a minute. And then I know day in and day out we can get the right amount through this, okay? That is the one downfall to those things right now. So that's how we monitor. We have our own rate controller, which is also called Sentinel. That Sentinel rate controller, it's going to show up on the VT, so the virtual terminal on your displays. So the Deere displays, 40 Gen 4, 2630, Pro 700 on the case side, the Ag Leader 1200, Trimble. Let's see what else is out there. Geez, I can't even remember some days. But anyway, that pretty much catches Iowa, I think. Yes.
How long have you been using this rate control?
Oh, geez.
Like my 2-year-old system from SureFire, is it still using that?
From SureFire. So depending on what you have, you could have a level 1 or a level 2 controller. Now we had something a little different back then, so maybe.
So I'm just, can I upgrade to that?
I'd have to look and see which one it is. Okay? Yep. If you do have that one, yes. Yes. You can do monitoring. You have to have our rate controller to do monitoring. We can plug our systems into other people's rate controllers. So the Raven rate controller, the RCM, the John Deere rate controller, the 2000, which is a Raven, right? And then the original, John Deere original rate controller. Those are really the 3. Ag Leader also has their ICMs.
I think that's what I have.
Okay, which control 1 product apiece, right? This one will control up to 4 products and monitor. Okay. And then we actually also have, we're new at it yet, but we have individual row control where we can control the flow at each row. We can, that's where when you really start doing prescriptions and stuff, that's where that's going to really come in handy, because that's constantly changing all the time. Okay, so basically top to bottom, I mean, our Sentinel system, it will do pretty much about anything you want to do, I believe. There's always things out there that it doesn't, but so when we look at our fertilizer systems, and I start with very simple and I build up to more complex, as I said, so we come out of our section valves. We can do section control through your task controller on your displays and stuff. So that's what controls your section control. And then we come out to your red balls. We can do that, guys. And then we come out to the dual tube out on the row, and then that's where we get that dual tube combination, and then down to the seed. This is our dual check valve. So essentially what happens here is I'm going down, I plant in a situation where I'm going to plant 5 miles an hour. I'm really not going to change my rate. I'm really not going to change my speed. This is what we would recommend, because If I start out and I'm going 5 miles an hour at 3 gallons an acre, I probably out of the small hose right here. So I have this cap opened. Well, if I increase that rate or I increase my speed and my pressure gets up over 70 pounds, then I can come out, close this one, open up the B hose, which is bigger, okay? Or if it gets up there again, then I can open both of those. That's where you get that range, okay? You're not taking orifices out, you're not, not getting into the fertilizer, it's quick and easy. Then we come up to our Gen 3 liquid shift. I'll tell you, 8 times out of 10 in Iowa, I push this system right here because this is where the high-speed units come into play. This is where prescriptions come into play, those kinds of things, and rate changes. So we start with the pump, okay, and then we go out through an A and B valve. A valve is connected to the one color hose. B valve is connected to the other. So I'm going down the field, and let's say a high-speed planter. I set down in the end row, and I come out of the end rows at 5 miles an hour. Remember what I said, when you double your speed, you double your flow, and then when you double your flow, you little over double your pressure. So now it's monitoring pressure, and if that pressure gets up over 70 psi, it's going to close the A valve automatically, open the B valve, and start flowing through the bigger hose to keep that pressure range in that 20 to 70 psi, okay? You need some pressure to get some back to get the flow right. But too much, that's when you start blowing orifices and stuff, okay? And that's what we ran into over the years is, if we get too much pressure in the system, the weakest link is found, and now we got fertilizer all over the place, right? And then if it gets up to 70 psi again, then it'll open both of those. So you really got a nice range of fertilizer flow there. And then obviously we can come through our sentinel monitoring, and then we put zip valves out on the rows. Those are electric zip valves, which then give us very good section controllability. So, if you have a 16-row planter with our rate controller, we can run each row, we can run up to 16 sections. So then you're row by row shut off at that point. If you had a 24 row, you'd be able to run 8 sections of 3 on that, or 12 sections of 2, okay? So it gives you really good resolution on your section control. The one thing I want to talk a little bit about too is pumps. The one thing about our systems, and I'll be just flat honest with you, we're not the cheapest game out there. There's a lot of people, we do a lot of quoting. Dear God, we do a lot of quoting. And you know what? Our systems are expensive, and it's because we don't like to compromise. We can run as simple as an electric pump. I don't like to run electric pumps over a 12-row planter. They'll get you in that 5 to 10 gallons a minute, but you start running the duty cycle up on an electric motor, you're going to burn it out pretty fast. And so and truly, if you're going to run a high-speed planter, if you're going to change rates and things like that, our pump right is our diaphragm pumps. They're a hydraulic pump. They take around 3 gallons a minute of flow, okay? And we can plumb out of your CCS, okay, and rob a little bit of flow from there. The nice thing about these is if you ever put a second product where you have to put a second pump on, if it's another hydraulic diaphragm pump like ours, you can hook them in series. And so you're using the same flow, okay? So that's another thing that helps keep that flow down. But the reason we use diaphragm pumps, guys, is a number of reasons. Number one, they're self-priming. So if you run out, you're not out there trying to prime air out of this thing. Number two, you can pull fertilizer from a long ways. We can pull fertilizer all the way from the front of the tractor. We do it every day. And so that's huge because not every tank is right on the planter. Not every tank is it can be saddle, they can have them on the front, they can be a pull behind. We can be pulling from multiple wing tanks. That's where the hydraulic diaphragm pump really comes. It hits the rates better. It hits it quick, it hits it now, and it doesn't just want, and just reliability. They're a very reliable pump, and that's why, you know, we use those.
And on an 80 acre field, you're within 1 to 2 gallon of what you're supposed to apply, correct? Generally, no more than 5.
Oh, I would say we're within, you know, 0.5%. Is probably where we're probably at.
And the other key is the rate is consistent to every orifice, regardless of where it's on the planter. It's not going through some type of diffuser and these kind of things.
Correct.
So your dose is the same every time, everywhere you go. You're not going to get streaky in the field because you know you got more over here and more over on that row.
Yep. When you come out of the
Surging with the ground pumps, all these kinds of
or slipping on the wheel, or yep. And it's easy, right? Because if you want to change rates, I go click, right? And this, I'm not out there with a wrench, loosening a nut, and then it had a special deal where you had to kind of crank it over, and you're like, well, I think that's about where I need to be, you know? Absolutely. Yep. So this is just another look at this Sentinel system, and it's just showing you that, hey, listen, you know, up on the come in, where are you? Up on the display, here's what my rows are going to look like if I'm monitoring, okay? Here's what the Sentinel is going to look like out there on the planter. This one here has them all banked together. A lot of times when we do a lot of these, we put them kind of across the wings, and that way you're close to the rows, less plumbing, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, our Sentinel rate controller, and then the individual row control module there working. There's a picture of the pump. Like I said, and then there's a tower pump. That's an electric pump. We have them because there are situations where we need them. And then we also have, guys, injection. So you could, by rights, if the guy doesn't mix his fertilizer, you could inject the fertilizer into another fertilizer into the fertilizer stream. So this one here, you would run this like a second product on your rate controller. And this is where you get down into like I'd say 1 to 80 ounces. This is where you get down into the ounces type of fluid. So like even on our anhydrous systems, we can use these to inject like N-Serve and things like that. Or, you know, on your planter, if you have some kind of insecticide or something, we have force cabinets as well. You know, we can inject that stuff into the stream there. So,
where you at on pricing on that versus the dosatron for biology?
way higher, and we get that a lot. But here's the deal: we're measuring it. And that's the deal.
5 times the dosatron, they're like 1,200, 1,600.
Yeah, we're going to be about $3,000 on that little pump. You know, 3 to 35, somewhere in there, depending on which one you get. Yep, but you're measuring it.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
It hooks into this system seamlessly.
Correct. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's like an electric pump for me because I run a dosatron on my planter, and I'm taking it off, so I just have problems with it. It seems like all the time they plug up and a valve breaks inside. And I take mine apart every year, clean it, put it back. But what I wonder is can I put that? I have this exact same system on my planter, only I run a piston pump. It's a different brand. I can't remember the brand, but
Okay.
I want to keep my dosatron, or I want the same system because I run basically, I don't run capture LFR, but I run generic capture because it's cheaper. And so I want that dosatron for a separate tank so my insecticide doesn't mix in with my starter.
Okay.
So what I'm wondering is I'm more curious on that. If I get rid of my dosatron, can I put that on my dosatron's tank? You kind of see what I'm saying? Because I want to get rid of my dosatron, but I want a totally separate tank.
Yeah, because you're just going to run a feeding hose out of there. Is all you're going to do. You know, so if your tank is here, I'd put my pump right next to it, kind of down, so then it feeds down into that pump.
Because that's between your what I call your fertilizer tank and your flow meters, correct?
Between your fertilizer tank and your flow meters.
Isn't that right?
Where does it empty into? The hose that goes?
Because the export that goes to the flow.
Right, right. So it's going to be, yeah, so you're going to be before the flow meter so that it measures it.
It is before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, because it's going to measure that total fluid going through there. So when you set your rate then the rate that you set is the right rate. But yeah, that'll work just as a second product and that. Okay. And the last thing, you know, guys, if you want to take a break, we'll come up here. I'll walk you through. I have the liquid shift system up here and kind of show you what it looks like on the screen, how it works, and that. But when we construct systems, what we do is we have a quoting system where the dealers that we work with, they will put in or customers, you can put it's right on our website. And we're asking for things. We're asking for a lot of information. We're asking for what are your flow rates? We're asking what the density is. What is it? We're asking what speeds you think you're going to run. We're asking what the planner is. Or strip till bar. We do a lot of strip till bars. We're asking, do you have section control? Do you want section control? What monitor you have? Do you have a rate controller? Do you want to use our rate controller? Do you have tanks? Do you want to get the tanks from us? What's your row placement method? We have totally tubular, we have Keatons, we have out the back duals, one, we have in furrow. We supply a lot of them. Now, if there's something special that you want to use, you know, like I think Precision Planning has something out that works. I think works kind of neat. You know, we can tie right in. Most of them are just a 3/8 or 1/4 inch tube on those, and we can tie right into those. So we look at each system individually, and then we figure out, you know, some of the bracketry and stuff is pretty generic. Okay, sometimes we have to figure out how to use that bracket. But for the most part, when it comes to planter bars, they're all square and about the same size. So we build that system for you. The other thing that's a portion of that is the harnessing. So we're SurePoint Ag and we're SurePoint Electronics. We make our own harnessing. If you see any harnesses out there that have orange and blue striping on them, that's our harnessing. So we make our own harnesses, and so we have the package. When you get the package of a fertilizer system, all the harnessing is in there as well. And that's why we're asking you what rate controller, what's on this, because then we need to know where we need to plug in, because this is all isobus. So we need to figure out where we can tee in to get on the bus to be able to monitor or rate control up to your display. So, okay, that's how we kind of do it. So anyway, any questions, comments, concerns, confused, bored? Okay, I'll be here. So like I say, I got my display up here, and you're more than welcome to come up and take a look at what we got going on. And I have my card with me too, so if you want to, you know, if you ever want to get in touch with me, you have questions, or you know, you as a customer, you have a customer that wants to do this stuff and he wants to monitor things like that, give me a shout. We'll see what we can put together for him. Okay. That's all I know. That's it. That's it.
We'll take a quick break and we'll get our gentlemen that have the drone stuff here, and we'll get their presentation loaded. And they're not the least, but the last act of the day.